Season in the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, I should say, just 2 days away. Dr. Erika Navarro joins us now to talk about the factors that can really affect the tropics. That includes El Nino.
Yes, and so Dr. Nab was talking about this last week when he was here. El Nino was one of the big factors going into the seasonal forecast for the 2017 season. So here are those numbers again, just to get an idea. We're calling for somewhere in between 11 to 17 storms, which is an average to an above average season. And again, that is one of the El Nino is a huge factor in that because it can have a large number of storms if it's weak. I mean, if you get a strong El Nino, that actually has a negative impact. So that's what we're looking out for this season. But the El Nino, if you don't know what that is, it's related to the ocean temperatures across the coast of Peru in the Pacific Ocean.
So it's actually in the Pacific. I think a lot of people think then, well, how does this influence what's happening in the Atlantic?
No,
but it does.
It does, and it's kind of amazing. Yeah, you think that's kind of far away, but actually this is a huge signal. Very warm ocean temperatures off the coast of Peru. That's the area that we often look out for. And so what happens is with that warm water, you get a lot of thunderstorm activity that comes a little bit closer to home. So where you have the warm water, the air above it heats up, and you get a lot of thunderstorms and that warm air rising up into the atmosphere.
All right.
So once we get that warm air in place, that's when the Atlantic starts to come into play. Because if we do get a strong El Nino this year, or even a little bit stronger of one, that's going to bring big impacts to us closer to home.
Okay.
So let's draw that back here. I'm going to write ITCZ again because that's that area that we are watching. And there's those strong thunderstorms coming up here on the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
So if we get those big blowups of thunderstorm activity, they get very strong outflow from these systems, and you get these strong winds that basically cut across the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, and that is not conducive to thunderstorm development or tropical cyclone development.
We talk about tropical systems wanting really calm winds aloft. They want to be able to just stack up. Where you get these strong winds aloft, it begins to tilt the systems, they collapse.
Yeah, they collapse. They can't form. They need that vertical stacking at all levels. And of course, you basically pull the top of the storm apart. I mean, the tropical cyclone can't survive under those conditions. So this is what El Nino does to the Atlantic, but it's not always the biggest factor that comes into play with the season.
Okay, so we've had El Nino years before, and you've done some research here. You just have to look back a couple of years to find some very impactful.
Erika Navarro here to talk a little bit more about Mora. You know, we talk about the wind, but the rain, another one of the big threats, and that will continue.
Yeah, so still a lot of heavy rainfall in the area, and now we're talking the complex interactions with the mountains, so that could definitely help bring a little bit of uptick in that precipitation amounts. And so you can see here on the water vapor, a lot of moisture still in the area. Those greens and blue colors showing you just the strength of this. But now, this cyclone at its peak winds was equivalent to a Category 1 hurricane here in the Atlantic Basin, and that was actually the first hurricane in the Northern Hemisphere this year. So that was pretty interesting to get started out. But there you go. There's still some heavy rains in the area. And unfortunately, again, 6 deaths already being blamed with this system. A lot of that due to downed trees. And unfortunately, this area is no stranger to very strong cyclones. And they're doing the right thing by evacuating these people. But unfortunately, it's just this is what you see in this type of area.
Right. And, you know, you pointed out a lot of the structures aren't quite as sound in some of these more remote areas. So it really leaves folks susceptible if they didn't evacuate.
But luckily, they did. You know, and I'm glad that that actually was the case. But if we now turn our eyes closer to home, we have something a little bit closer that we're watching in the Eastern Pacific.
So the Eastern Pacific, you know, the hurricane season starts about 2 weeks earlier than it.
Fuel to keep going, and then at that case, because we have that in place, we would look to other factors to see the development, be that shear or the instability or the dry air coming off the Sahara.
For now, pretty quiet out there, and June's not typically an overly active month, right?
No, definitely. So, we typically get 1 or 2 named systems in June. It's not out of the question, but we typically don't like to see a lot of activity in June.
All right, Dr. Navarro, thank you very much. Our questions tonight as we sound off.
All right. First up, 5 to 8, maybe 10 inches.
Miami hit, what, 98 degrees? That was their second warmest temperature.
So you got to find something to finally just truly break it.
We never get tropical systems that hit. The atmospheric pattern generally isn't favorable there, but
if you get a fast-moving storm in that region, you know, the water temperatures typically drop off very quickly as you approach California. But if you get a strong and fast-moving system,
we are above average, but not that